Hi, I'm Marjorie. My father-in-law's 75th birthday was supposed to be a celebration of family. I planned every detail, from the wine pairings to the music. But when I arrived, there was no seat for me, no chair, no name, just silence. They called it a mistake. But how do you accidentally remove someone from every photo, every email, every memory? And when they replaced my daughter in the tribute video with someone more on-brand, I didn't make a scene. I made a decision. What would you do if the people who used you suddenly forgot you existed? The snow hadn't started yet, but the air had that scent. Sharp, clean, and filled with warning. Aspen was quiet that December morning, the kind of silence you only get just before a storm. I was standing at the kitchen counter, barefoot, hands wrapped around a chipped mug Ilara made in second grade, when my phone buzzed beside the bowl of peeled clementines. It was the Caldwell family group chat, named Forever Caldwell, though I'd long stopped believing the name meant me. Thumbnails popped up one after another, images of floral arrangements, pictures of tux fittings, screenshots of hotel bookings, and finally, an elegant digital invitation with soft gold lettering and a watercolor of the Rocky Mountains. Vernon Caldwell's 75th birthday celebration. December 17th, 6:30 p.m. Formal attire, family only. My name wasn't there. Not even a mention. Not on the to line. Not in the RSVP instructions. Not in the "we can't wait to celebrate with you" message that Callista, my sister-in-law, had obviously written. Everyone else had a custom line. "Can't wait to see your speech, Thomas." Or, "Looking forward to your toast, Lois." But for me, nothing. I blinked, then looked again, scrolling slowly. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe mine had been sent separately. But as the minutes passed, the chat filled with replies. "Excited! I'll bring the whiskey Vernon loves. Callista, this is gorgeous. You nailed it, again." I didn't reply. I didn't know how to. The invitation was clear. I wasn't invited. Not officially. Not emotionally. "Mom," Ilara called from the living room, "can you help me find the red ornaments?" I set the phone down face down on the counter and smiled the way I'd learned to, measured even. "Be right there, honey." As I helped her dig through the storage boxes for ornaments, I kept waiting for someone to notice. For someone in the family to send a private message. A text. A casual, "Oops. Sorry, Marjorie. We forgot to include yours." But nothing came. Maybe they forgot me by accident. Maybe. Later that afternoon, while Ilara sat at the dining table doodling her letter to Santa, I opened the final draft of the menu I'd been curating for weeks. Vernon loved anything with roasted garlic. Lois was allergic to scallops. I'd built this menu like a puzzle of preferences, perfectly balanced. I emailed it over to Callista to send to the printer, then got a reply an hour later. Attached was the proof of the printed menu, done and locked. Seating list: Richard Caldwell. Host: Lois Caldwell. Hostess: Thomas Caldwell. First son: Callista Caldwell. Daughter: Harlan Caldwell. Second son: Mrs. Levi. Event support: Mrs. Levi. That was my maiden name. Not even my legal name anymore. They hadn't just left me off the invitation. They'd stripped my title, my role, my connection. I emailed back instantly. "Hi, small correction. It should say Marjorie Caldwell. I'm not using Levi anymore." 10 minutes later, the printer replied, "Apologies. We've already gone to production. Edits can't be made at this stage." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Ilara looked up from her drawing and squinted at the menu on my screen. "Why don't they use your real name, Mom?" "I don't know," I answered honestly, brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear. It hadn't always been this way. 3 years ago, Thanksgiving at the Caldwell home had felt like a turning point. Vernon stood at the head of the table, his voice booming as he raised a glass. "I just want to thank Marjorie," he said, looking right at me. "You're the glue holding us all together. We'd be lost without you." I remembered the way Harlan smiled, the brief squeeze of my hand under the table. I remembered feeling like I'd finally crossed some invisible line, that I belonged. Now I was back outside the line again, looking in. That night, after Ilara had gone to bed, I lay on the couch scrolling through my email. A new voice memo popped up from Callista. No message, no context. Just a 19-second clip. I pressed play. Callista's voice, laughing, then a hushed whisper. I made sure she doesn't have a seat this time. Let's see if she still shows up like a golden retriever. Then static. I stared at the screen, unmoving. She hadn't meant to send it to me. It was for Lois, probably. Or Thomas. Or maybe she just clicked the wrong thread. I saved the audio to a locked folder on my cloud. Then I deleted the message from my inbox. No drama, no reply. Just silence. But I heard her clearly. Callista wanted to see if I'd still show up. I'd show up all right, but not the way she expected. The light filtering through my office window barely touched the edge of my desk, just enough to make the dust dance. The house was quiet. Ilara still asleep upstairs. Harlan already gone without saying goodbye again. I sat down with my coffee and opened my inbox. There it was. An email from Lois with the subject line, Final Roles, Vernon's 75th. There were bullet points, tasks, names. Callista was creative lead. Melissa was in charge of guest relations. And Rory, naturally, would be host liaison. My name? Point of contact, logistics. No Marjorie. No daughter-in-law. No acknowledgement that I was part of the family celebrating the man I'd supported for over a decade. Just a line item, a title. I reread the email 3 times, sipping slowly, letting the warmth of the mug ground me. Maybe this was her way of complimenting my skills. Maybe, just maybe, she assumed I'd want to handle it because I was good at it. Efficient, invisible. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the shared calendar link. My initials were scattered across every task: menu finalization, venue coordination, vendor payments, transport scheduling. There was no seat for me at the table, but my fingerprints were on every napkin. Later that morning, as I was reviewing contracts, a notification pinged from social media. Callista had posted a behind-the-scenes video to her story. I watched out of habit, not curiosity. The clip panned across the family gathered at her place, laughing, wine in hand, laying out vision boards for the birthday theme. Somewhere off camera, Lois's voice said, with that high-pitched amusement I'd come to dread, "Well, Marjorie isn't technically one of us. She's the paper daughter-in-law." There was laughter, easy, unguarded, like I wasn't ever going to hear it. I muted the video, closed my laptop. Paper daughter-in-law. That phrase lodged itself under my skin like a splinter. It wasn't the first time they'd tried to diminish me, but this was different. They didn't just sideline me. They declared out loud what they'd always implied in silence. I stood at the window for a while, watching the shadows on the snow. Then, almost without thinking, I whispered, "You may not see me as family, but I hold your whole event together." No one heard it but me. But it settled something. That evening, I brought it up with Harlan. Not the video, just the email. I picked my words like glass out of skin. "I saw the task list from your mom," I said as we both cleared dinner dishes. "Funny how I'm listed under logistics, not family." He didn't even flinch, just shrugged and started rinsing plates. "You're reading too much into it. It's just mom's way. She's old school." "No, Harlan. Old school is using linen napkins. This is deliberate." He didn't look at me, just handed me a wet plate and said, "It's not worth getting upset over." That was the moment it shifted again. Not because he defended her. He didn't. He just didn't care enough to understand what it meant to be erased politely. Indifference and neglect often do much more damage than outright dislike, I muttered, drying the plate slowly. "What?" he asked, not really listening. "Nothing." Dinner with Ilara was always the best part of my day. She didn't judge. She didn't calculate. She just existed in her small, radiant world. We had grilled cheese and tomato soup, her favorite, at the breakfast nook, while the fairy lights above us blinked softly. "Are you excited for Grandpa's party?" she asked between bites. I hesitated, choosing my words. Sometimes, grown-ups forget how to be kind. She tilted her head. Are they being unkind to you? I smiled, brushed crumbs from her cheek. Let's just say, Mom's going to make sure we remember how to be kind, okay? She nodded like it was the most natural answer in the world. After putting her to bed, I sat at my computer again, opening the folder labeled Caldwell Events. It was overwhelming how many files bore my name. PDF contracts, vendor quotes, floral diagrams, even a mood board. Yet nowhere was there a file that included me as a guest, as family, as anything more than an asset. I scrolled for nearly an hour, going back months, years. I'd been the planner, the fixer, the executor, but never the recipient, never the one who got thanked in the speech, or had her name on the seating chart, or even her photo in the recap albums. I opened a new folder, Exit Protocol Phase 1, and I whispered, just for myself, this time, I'll plan it perfectly, but it'll be the last time they use me. They thought I was still willing to earn a seat. What they didn't know, I'd already started building my exit. The sidewalks downtown still had patches of snow pressed thin by winter boots. Ilara's small hand was wrapped in mine as we strolled past holiday windows strung with white lights and cedar garlands. She was babbling about the class snowflake project, her voice bright and full of imagination. I nodded along, letting her words carry me until my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. It was a text from a woman I'd done charity planning with, friendly but distant. Saw your family at the pre-birthday shoot. Gorgeous group. Love Callista's color coordination. Photo shoot? I felt my chest tighten. Not panic, not surprise, just confirmation. I hadn't known there was a shoot. No one had told me. Not even Harlan. Not a word. I forced my face to hold still for Ilara's sake. Thanks, I typed quickly, my fingers stiff. They love surprises. We ducked into the bakery for a cocoa. I smiled through the warm clatter, but something inside had shifted. Not because I wasn't invited. No, that was old pain by now, but because someone else assumed I had been. That was the part that stung. Out there in the world, I was still supposed to be family. Back home, Ilara ran up the stairs to grab glitter markers while I settled onto the couch and pulled up the Caldwell shared photo album on my laptop. New folder at the top. Caldwell Sadim 5 Preview. I clicked it. A pop-up. Access restricted by owner. Just like that. A private album. Locked from me. I didn't even try again. I closed the laptop and just sat there. No tears. Just a dull burn behind my ribs. That's the thing about exclusion. It doesn't scream. It echoes. Quietly, insistently. I remembered a quote I'd read once, something I used to share in leadership trainings. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. Elie Wiesel. I whispered it under my breath. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd erased me with intention. I stepped out to the porch, needing air, needing stillness, and then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Vernon directly. He picked up on the second ring. Marjorie? Hi, I said, keeping my voice soft. I just wanted to check. Should I be prepping anything for the shoot? I saw there was one. I'm happy to coordinate if you need extra hands. There was a long pause. Marjorie, we're keeping things simple this year. Lois is handling that part. I opened my mouth to respond, to offer help anyway, but all I heard was, I'm late for a call. Click. The silence that followed was louder than his words. I held the phone to my ear for a few seconds longer, as if he might come back. He didn't. Back inside, I dropped my coat over the arm of the chair and sat in the car parked out front for almost an hour, engine off. I scrolled through old emails and messages, my own digital trail of being sidelined. The dinner where I was seated between toddlers, while the real family toasted at the other end. The Christmas card photo I took for them, but wasn't asked to be in. The family Facebook group where I was tagged only when they needed something. It wasn't carelessness, it was training. I had been groomed to feel grateful for scraps. Maya Angelou's voice rang clear in my head. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. And then, as if on cue, Ilara's voice called from the porch. Mom, I need help with the glue stick. That night, after dinner, she brought me a drawing she had made for school. Our family, it said at the top in thick crayon. Stick figures stood in front of a house, Vernon and Lois in the middle, Callista, Thomas, Rory, Harlan off to one side. And me? I was outside the house, not in front of it, not beside the group, standing off to the right, holding a rectangle in my hand. What's this? I asked gently, pointing to the shape. That's you, she said, matter of fact, with the clipboard, 'cause you always make things work. I didn't correct her. I didn't ask why I wasn't drawn with the others. Children have a way of seeing through performance. As she bounced off to brush her teeth, I sat holding the paper like it was made of glass. Even my child sees it. Maybe it's time I stopped pretending not to. I wasn't going to ask for a seat anymore. I was going to build a door and choose who walked through it. Friday evening arrived cloaked in gold light, the kind that made everything look more expensive than it was. I had just finished clearing Ilara's markers from the kitchen table when my phone chimed with a notification. Subject line, Preview, Vernon 75th Video Tribute, sent by Lois to the whole family. I clicked the link and pressed play. The opening was a dramatic montage, photos of Vernon as a boy, growing up in Connecticut, his early days with Lois, black and white candids with the kids. Music swelled. The transitions were polished. Callista's voiceover floated above it all, syrupy and practiced. We are so proud to honor the man who taught us strength, grace, and legacy. Footage of Thomas giving a toast, Melissa hugging Lois, Callista laughing beside Vernon at some vineyard I never visited. Then came the group clips from last year's family barbecue. I remembered that day. I'd taken most of the pictures. In one wide shot, the camera panned across the lawn and paused. My arm was in the frame, but my face was gone, cropped. I could hear my voice faintly in the background, directing Ilara to stand still. But visually, it was as if I wasn't there. I rewound, played it again, then again. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just stared, rewinding to the same moment, pausing on the same half hand, the only trace I was ever part of them. I remembered what Maya Angelou said. People will forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And right now, I felt disposable. Minutes later, a text popped up from Rory. Hey, sorry about the video thing. Cal just didn't have time to include everyone. No big deal. I stared at the message before typing back. I wasn't everyone, Rory. I was the one who paid the deposit on the editor. He didn't respond. I locked my phone, sat in the stillness of the kitchen. That was always their excuse. No big deal. But it wasn't neglect. It was intent. They don't erase what they don't value. They erase what they resent. Just before bed, I checked the family iMessage thread. Forever Caldwell. It was gone from my app. Not muted, not archived. Gone. I searched my text. Nothing. I clicked into the shared calendar I'd been managing for 2 months. Access denied. Then I checked the Dropbox folder, where I'd stored all the vendor confirmations, dietary notes, seating chart iterations. Revoked. They hadn't just locked me out of the party. They'd erased my digital fingerprint. This wasn't just about forgetting me. This was a full extraction. I took screenshots of everything. Every access denied message. Every revoked permission. You don't need a knife to wound someone, I whispered. Exclusion is sharper than steel. The next morning, I brought it up at breakfast. Not as a fight, just a fact. I'm off the family chat, I said, pouring coffee. Harlan didn't look up. Huh. And I don't have access to the planning files anymore. He buttered toast. Probably a tech glitch. I'll check with Cal. I waited. Let him chew. They removed me on purpose, Harlan. He sighed. Mar, don't overreact. These things happen when everyone's busy. You're reading into it. I set my cup down with a clink. No. These things happen when someone wants you gone, and everyone else lets them. His jaw tightened. He didn't deny it. That night, after Alara was asleep, I opened my laptop. My event calendar was still synced. I hovered over Vernon 75th and clicked delete. One by one, I removed my company's name from the vendor contracts, changed the forwarding emails, canceled the floral confirmations, the catering service, the cake. I didn't make a sound. They'd notice soon enough. But by the time they did, it would already be too late. I created a new folder. I titled it Operation Exit. They had drawn the line. I just decided to step over it and start drawing my own. Saturday morning arrived with a deceptive calm. The light through my office window was soft, but my mood wasn't. I sat with my third cup of coffee, going through final expenses for Vernon's party, each document like a brick stacking onto my chest. Everything from the tent deposit to the signature cocktail design bore my initials. I opened a file labeled Old Contracts out of habit more than curiosity. It wasn't mine. I hadn't named it. But the moment it opened, I felt my stomach turn. It was a scanned copy of a property deed. Our old conversations about Vernon transferring the vacation home in Snowmass to Harlan and me played in my mind like an old voicemail. But the title said otherwise. Rory Caldwell, in bold. Deed signed by Vernon, by Lois, by Harlan. My name was nowhere. No consultation, no signature, no explanation. They never took it from me, I muttered aloud. They just gave it to someone else and hoped I wouldn't notice. I read it again, slower this time, to make sure I wasn't misreading. But it was all there in legal ink. The same vacation home Vernon had said would stay in the hands of the son who married a woman who holds the fort. The fort, apparently, now belonged to the other son. I didn't slam anything. I didn't throw my coffee. I just stared, still, calculating. A few hours later, Harlan and I sat across from each other, mid-brunch. Toast, eggs, and another silence heavy enough to cut. I didn't wait long. When were you planning to tell me you signed away our future? He didn't even blink. It's family property. Rory needed it for his business loan. You still live here, don't you? He said it like that settled it. As if I should be grateful to still reside within the walls I decorated and paid for and protected. I stared at him. It was promised to us. Promised, but not written, he replied, sipping orange juice. We're all family, Mar. It's still in the family. Not in mine, I said. He didn't respond, didn't defend, didn't explain. Just went back to scrolling through his phone. Later that evening, I was sitting in the living room when my phone buzzed with a social media tag. I tapped it open and saw Callista's newest Instagram story. A boomerang of her clinking champagne glasses with Melissa and 2 cousins. The caption, "Some people just don't know their place." There was a muffled laugh, hers. And then her voice saying, "Marjorie's good at making things pretty. That's about it." I watched it once, downloaded it, and took screenshots of the likes. I recognized Lois, and Vernon, and yes, even Harlan. They don't humiliate you loudly because they're proud, I whispered to myself. They do it quietly because they think you won't fight back. I didn't comment. I didn't reply. But something inside me stopped softening. The next day, I sent a group text to the family thread. No emotion, just clarity. Just confirming my current roles for the birthday, event planner, contact for all vendor contracts, and family member? No response, not for hours. Then finally, Melissa replied with a single laughing emoji. That was it. No defense, no correction. No one saying, "Of course you're family." Just silence and a digital smirk. They don't respond, I thought, because they don't know what I know, or how far I'm willing to go. That night, I opened my laptop. I clicked into the folder titled Caldwell Event Master Plan, and I created a new one, Exit Protocol, Phase 1. I said it aloud to the empty room, as if reading a verdict. Kindness isn't weakness, silence isn't submission, But I guess they forgot. They saw a planner. They forgot I was the architect. Saturday started with the hum of excitement. Ilara had been practicing all week, her little voice floating through the house every time she rehearsed the opening lines of, "You are the sunshine of my life." It had been her idea to sing it for Vernon. "It's his favorite," she'd said, and she wasn't wrong. I made pancakes, humming along as she warmed up in the living room, holding the hairbrush like a microphone. Her dress was laid out on the couch, satin and soft yellow, simple but lovely. Something I picked out with care. She was proud, and I was proud of her. The text came in just as I flipped the last pancake. Callista. "Hey, change of plans. We're giving that spot to Emmy. More photogenic and consistent." That was it. No greeting, no apology, no explanation beyond that line, as if my daughter's joy was a placeholder they could replace without pause. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then glanced toward the living room. Ilara was twirling, barefoot, singing the song with such lightness I nearly dropped the plate. I waited until she paused for water before telling her. "Sweetheart," I said gently, kneeling beside her, "there's been a small change in the program. Emmy will be singing instead." Her face fell, like a balloon losing air in silence. "Was I not good enough?" she asked, her voice almost too soft to hear. I touched her cheek, tucking a curl behind her ear. "You were perfect. They just decided something else." But what I thought was, they didn't just cut me out. They came for my daughter's joy, too. The rest of the morning passed in a haze. Ilara stayed quiet, retreating into her sketchbook. I let her be. There are some things even a mother's comfort can't undo in the moment. By evening, the house was quiet again. I found her sitting on the staircase, still wearing the dress, wrinkled now and half-buttoned. She looked up at me with those wide, searching eyes. "Grandma said I looked off theme," she said flatly, "that I should wear something more like Emmy's." I didn't speak right away. I couldn't. That dress, chosen with love, made to feel special, had become a mirror. Not just of how they saw her, but how they'd always seen me. Never quite right. Never quite one of them. I'd swallowed every insult for years, smiled through the slights, the omissions, the polite rewrites of my role in every story they told. But Ilara? She didn't know how to shrink yet, and I'd be damned if I let them teach her. Later that night, after she was asleep, I logged into the event dashboard. My fingers moved with a calm they hadn't felt in weeks. I removed Callista's media team from the vendor list. I rerouted the email confirmations to my personal account. I didn't leave a note. I didn't ask for permission. A mother's love doesn't burn. It freezes. It waits. And then it moves. The system pinged as each change processed. One by one, her fingerprints were wiped clean. At dinner the next day, I sat across from Harlan, who was halfway through his wine, when I said, "They cut Ilara from the performance." He didn't look up. "That's Callista's part of the event. Don't take it personally. It's for optics." I placed my fork down gently. If hurting my daughter is optics, maybe it's time this family goes out of focus. That made him look at me. I didn't flinch. I didn't explain. That night, I found Ilara asleep in her bed, curled around the folded lyric sheet like it was a teddy bear. I tucked the blanket up to her chin and kissed her temple. They may have silenced her voice, but I still had mine, and I wasn't done speaking. They came for her sparkle. I was going to show them what happens when you dim a woman who built the stage. It was just before dusk, the kind of aspen evening where the sky glowed peach at the edges, and the cold didn't quite bite. Yet, I was in the venue's private coordination room, finalizing the seating chart before sending it to the floor staff. 13 chairs, tightly arranged around a long white table with gold-rimmed settings. I paused over my own name. I'd placed myself strategically between Harlan and Vernon. Then the door creaked open. Callista entered mid-laugh, arm looped around one of Lois's longtime charity board friends. I hadn't seen her approach, but I recognized the sharp edge of her voice instantly. "Some women marry into families," she said, too loud to be private. "Others just orbit around them forever." They laughed. not loud. Polite, like a whispered agreement. I smiled from behind the seating chart, didn't lift my head, didn't flinch. But I noted the orbit, her sun, my moon, and tucked it where I kept the receipts. No one calls you a satellite if they believe you're a star. Later that evening, I arrived at the dinner walkthrough in a sleek black suit. Simple, elegant, intentional. I'd worn this outfit to 2 national galas and once to a university board meeting, but to the wrong eyes, black was black. As I stepped inside the ballroom, a young staff member, maybe 22 and nervous, approached with a tray. "Kitchen's this way, ma'am. The uniform's already in the back." He smiled, clueless, assuming. I didn't correct him, just looked him in the eyes and said, "Not tonight." Then I reached into my bag and slipped him a 5. "But thank you for being honest." He blinked, confused, then walked off. I stood still in the middle of that ballroom. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above me. The scent of lemon polish and candle wax hovered faintly. And yet, I felt invisible. Because I'd been made so useful, I'd vanished. I stepped into the hallway and pulled out my phone. Not to scroll, to record. Photos, notes, voicemails. "When you're not seen," I whispered, "you have to leave a record that proves you existed." I began forwarding every contract with my signature to my personal account. Screenshotted vendor confirmations, captured timestamps. This wasn't revenge. It was protection. Documentation for a story no one else seemed willing to tell, but that I was preparing to write, line by line. An hour later, the photographer called for a family photo. Everyone gathered. Lois, beaming, gesturing like a cruise director. "Come on, let's line up. Girls on this side, boys over there." As I stepped toward the group, she tilted her head and said, "Why don't you stand just to the side, Marjorie, in case we don't use all the shots?" No one blinked. Not Harlan, not even Alara, who was across the room with Emmy, adjusting a ribbon. I walked to my place, posed perfectly. Then, just before the shutter clicked, I stepped out of frame. No one said anything, and I didn't offer an excuse. I was done asking to be visible. That night, back in my home office, I opened the main vendor contract for the venue. Page 6, cancellation policy. Under my name, my business. I edited the clause, removed my company as financial guarantor, uploaded the new version with a timestamp, and forwarded it to the hotel under a neutral admin account. "Let them build their empire on hollow ground," I said aloud. "I'm already planting elsewhere." I closed the document, powered down the screen, and leaned back. The next time they looked for me, it wouldn't be in their shadow. The rooftop at the Little Nell shimmered under string lights, the sky behind it turning from lavender to indigo. Snow hadn't fallen yet, but the crisp air already felt like December's warning. I arrived early, as planned, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. There was something about walking into a room before it's filled with people that lets you read the truth of it. The tables were perfect, white linen stretched like skin, each napkin tucked at a perfect angle. Candles flickered, cutlery gleamed. I had curated every inch. I traced my hand along the place cards, one by one, like checking attendance in a classroom. Vernon, Lois, Rory, Callista, Melissa, Harlan, even Emmy with a flourish under her name. But no Marjorie, not a single card. I checked the secondary tables, the side seats, the extras. I circled twice. My name wasn't misplaced, it was omitted. I was still standing there, in disbelief, when Lois appeared beside me. Her perfume always gave her away before her footsteps did. She gave me a small smile, tight and pleasant. "There was a bit of a last-minute rearrangement," she said, adjusting her pearl earring. "Hope you don't mind standing to deliver your toast." Toast, the one no one asked me to give. "No problem," I said, voice steady. "I'll step aside when the moment comes." I turned and walked straight out of the reception area, down the stairs, and into the hotel lounge. I didn't need to cause a scene. The scene was already playing out without me. Once I sat at the corner of the bar, I opened my phone, not to scroll or escape, but to act. This wasn't about revenge. This was about authorship. This was about ending the version of the story they had been writing with my name crossed out. I opened the control sheet and triggered the scheduled cancellations I'd queued over the last week. Venue deposit reversals, vendor withdrawals, catering halt, legal notifications drafted, ready to send, and I hit send. Back upstairs, the party was in full motion. Glasses clinking, soft jazz floating through the air. Until, one by one, things began to unravel. Waitstaff received calls, eyebrows furrowed. One tray of wine was returned to the bar. The appetizer station paused mid-service. Vernon was pulled aside by the hotel manager. I could see him from the lounge window, gesturing, growing red, eyes darting. Lois's smile faltered, then froze. Callista stormed toward the kitchen, heels loud against stone. I couldn't hear her, but I saw the shape of her mouth when the staff told her, "There's a billing error. You'll need to speak to the planner." They never expected a storm in heels and silence. I watched from behind the glass, unblinking, invisible by design. My phone buzzed. Harlan. "Marjorie, what did you do?" "They're panicking. You're embarrassing my mother," I replied. "I'm not embarrassing anyone. I'm reminding them who signed the contracts." No more than 10 words, but it shifted the ground. He didn't reply. I took one last sip of my drink, then opened my email, attached the full set of financial records, contract logs, and communication trails to my lawyer. Subject: Contingency confirmation, Caldwell event body. They erased my name from their table. I just erased their party from existence. I clicked send. What they thought was the finale was just the intermission. The reckoning hadn't even begun. Sunday morning started the way most mornings did, with coffee, silence, and habit. I poured the mug slowly, not because I needed the caffeine, but because I needed the ritual. The phone buzzed on the counter before I could take the first sip. A headline from a local news app flashed on screen. Elite Family's Gala ends in chaos. Source: Citi's internal collapse. I stared at it, then tapped. The article wasn't long, but it was enough. It didn't name names. It didn't have to. Aspen's social circles are small, and gossip moves faster than snowfall. The phrasing was polite but brutal. Unconfirmed reports suggest a last-minute withdrawal of planning support, and vendor agreements led to a breakdown of the evening's timeline. Guests described the atmosphere as tense and disorganized. I sipped my coffee slowly, letting the bitterness settle on my tongue. My phone buzzed again, and again, and again. Texts, missed calls, emails. The Caldwell circle was unraveling in real time. First came the text from extended family. "What happened? We heard you walked out." Callista's crying in her car. Vernon's furious. Then from Vernon's country club group. "Was it a protest? I saw your name missing from the program. Didn't make sense." And finally, Lois's board friends chimed in with polite panic. "Hope everything's all right. We're just confused. Everyone thought you were behind the event?" I didn't respond to any of them. I didn't need to. They were already answering themselves. I thought of a quote I'd taped to the inside of my cabinet door years ago. "When truth is on your side, let the noise do its work." By noon, Vernon posted a family photo from the night before. A carefully lit shot taken before everything fell apart. Lois, Callista, the others arranged in symmetrical ease. But I wasn't in it. Neither was Alara. The caption read, "Grateful for the ones who truly matter." I watched the likes climb, the comments flow in, dozens of "beautiful family" and "Callista looks radiant." Then one comment stopped the scroll. "Wasn't your daughter-in-law the one who organized this?" It got 6 likes in the first minute, then 10, then 20, and more came. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I saved the thread. That one line would echo louder than any paragraph I could write. The front door slammed not long after. Harlan, He looked like he hadn't slept. Jacket wrinkled, tie loose, phone in his hand. "You don't know what you've done," he said, barely closing the door behind him. I stayed where I was, arms crossed. "No, Harlan, I know exactly what I've done. This is going to cost the whole family," he snapped. Dad's furious. Mom's board is reconsidering her chair position. Callista's being crucified on Instagram. What did you expect? I walked past him toward the kitchen. I expected that one day someone would notice what I built and how quickly they tore it down. "You could have just talked to us." "No," I said firmly, turning back. "What I could have done was keep building for people who thought their name was enough. Maybe now you'll all understand. Value isn't inherited. It's demonstrated." He opened his mouth, but I'd already turned. I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. I let my quiet speak louder. Later that evening, I opened my email. Among the usual contracts and auto promos was one subject line that stood still. "We'd love your side of the story. Exclusive." A regional magazine editor. She had attended the event. She'd heard whispers. Inside the body of the message, "I'm reaching out to understand what really happened. The version we're hearing doesn't make sense without you." I stared at the screen. For a moment, I felt that familiar temptation. To explain, to defend. But I didn't reply. Not yet. They erased me from the post. The world asked why. That's all I ever wanted. For them to ask why. They posted a photo without me. Now they'll live in a world where my silence is the loudest part of the picture. The sun filtered through the pines in slow silver rays that Monday morning. Aspen had a way of looking more expensive after a storm, even if the storm wasn't weather. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where so many polite betrayals had passed across over buttered toast, and stared at the mug in my hands. It had gone cold. I hadn't even sipped it yet. The phone rang once. Then again. On the third ring, I picked up. "Marjorie!" His voice was unmistakable. "Vernon. Not Harlan. Not Lois. Vernon." I stayed silent. "We underestimated you," he said flatly, like reading from a script someone else forced into his hand. "No," I said, calm as I'd ever been. "You measured me, and you thought I'd never act." He exhaled. It wasn't a sigh of relief. It was resignation. An old man realizing the house he built had termites, and that he'd been feeding them. I didn't gloat. I didn't ask him what he wanted. Some apologies don't land as victories. They're simply admissions that collapse has finally caught up. After we hung up, I went to the front door just as the courier pulled up. He handed me a small box, neatly wrapped in deep green with a white ribbon. Inside was the birthday gift I'd commissioned for Vernon, a rare first edition of a novel he once mentioned in passing, years ago, during one of those long dinners where no one listened to me, but I still listened to them. I'd had it monogrammed. I'd written a card, a short, dignified note, signed in my best penmanship. The card was missing. The gift had been placed anonymously on the communal gift table, without a name. No one would know it was from me. Maybe that was the point. You can erase my name, but you can't erase the intent. I left the box on the entry table and walked out into the morning. I passed the little Nell on my walk, the terrace still strung with leftover lights. The scent of spent candles still clung to the air like memory. That place, that table, that chair, the oops from Harlan, the sidelong glance from Lois, the look on Alara's face. It replayed in my head like a slideshow on loop. But now, instead of shame, there was stillness. They thought the silence that followed me was defeat. It was space, so I could move. When I returned home, an email from my lawyer was waiting. All contracts were now officially severed. All deposits returned to my company. Every trace of my involvement wiped clean, but on my terms. I exhaled deeply for the first time in days, maybe weeks. This wasn't about burning bridges. This was about reclaiming my name, on paper, in presence, in purpose. Later that afternoon, I made myself a fresh cup of coffee and opened my laptop. There was a message I'd been meaning to send for weeks. It had been drafted, redrafted, and saved a dozen times in my head. I opened a blank email. To denverwomenleadufoundation.org. Subject, proposal, venue, plus event planning inquiry, body. Dear team, I'd love to support your mission through event coordination and partnership. I'm passionate about building events that empower, and not just decorate. Let's talk soon. Best, Marjorie Caldwell owner. Reframe events. I hit send without blinking. My reputation wasn't ruined. It was reborn, this time, without needing a seat at their table. The woman they tried to erase just made room for herself, in a world far beyond theirs. The subject line read, Rebuilding Brunch Invitation, Vernon's Closest Circle. Sent by Lois's assistant. It arrived at 6:47 a.m. on Tuesday, as if early timing might soften its absurdity. I didn't open the attachment. Didn't need to. I clicked the trash icon and it disappeared. Not every olive branch is worth reaching for. Some are just poisoned twigs with better packaging. I made a second cup of coffee, stronger than usual, and walked upstairs to the guest room that had become my quiet space. I opened the closet and stared at the few boxes I'd already started filling. Documents for Alara's school transfer, backups of my design software, personal notebooks I hadn't touched in years. There was no sadness in the motion, just purpose. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't packing to leave anything behind. I was packing to step forward. I left the things that had never truly belonged to me. A porcelain vase from Lois, half of our wedding china, a framed photo of Vernon holding a glass of wine while everyone else was out of focus, including me. I didn't want reminders of how hard I tried to belong. I wanted space for what I was about to become. The best revenge is not in destruction, I murmured aloud, sliding a binder of venue templates into a tote. It's in building something better. That afternoon, I heard the knock before I saw him. Harlan. He looked tired, softer around the edges. No suit, no defense. I'm not here to fight, he said as I opened the door. I hope not, I replied, stepping aside. There's nothing left to win. We sat at the kitchen table, two ghosts haunting a house we once shared. You were the strongest part of this family, he said after a long pause, and you let them try to break me anyway. He didn't argue. He just nodded. Not out of agreement, out of acknowledgement. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I didn't demand anything. I hope you find peace, Harlan, I said as he stood to leave. I'm not angry anymore, just done. Some endings aren't fireworks, just lights fading gently in the distance. Later that evening, I was organizing Alara's desk drawers when I found it. A folded sheet of paper in her handwriting. In crayon, she had drawn 3 stick figures. Me, her, and a big red heart above us. Beneath it, she wrote, I think Mommy's brave. She didn't scream, but she still won. I sat down, the paper resting in my lap like a weight and a reward. That was it. That was the validation I never got from Vernon or Lois or anyone else in that family, but from the person who mattered most. It was enough. I smiled. Children watch everything. What we let happen to us. What we do after. Alara wouldn't remember every detail of what they did, but she would remember what I did with it. The next morning, I signed the lease. The new office wasn't big, but it had windows that faced west. And when the sun set, it hit every corner of the room like it was meant to light something that had been waiting patiently to shine. I stood in the doorway after the real estate agent handed me the keys. And for once, I didn't need anyone to open the door for me. I had the keys. Leaving wasn't losing. Staying would have been. The Mediterranean air smelled like citrus and salt, soft and warm. I stood on a sun-bleached terrace in Amalfi, clipboard in hand, watching a team of florists suspend chandeliers made entirely of white roses. The bride's parents were laughing in the corner, a gentle kind of joy I hadn't seen in a long time. A year ago, I was in Rome, different country, different rooftop, watching a family crumble under the weight of their own facade. That night, I was made invisible. Tonight, I made memories for others. On my terms. My phone buzzed with a gentle nudge in my suitcase. I tucked it away all morning. I finally pulled it out to a small folded paper from Alara. In her handwriting, uneven but proud. Mom, I hope the chairs are just the right number, but if not, we'll make our own table. I read it twice. She didn't just echo my pain, she rewrote it. That was legacy. Not wealth, not reputation. Legacy was showing your child what to do when the door shuts, teaching them how to build one that opens wider. Back in the States, the storm had moved from family drama to public ripple. A long-form feature ran in a well-regarded publication. It didn't name names, but the hints weren't subtle. A well-known East Coast philanthropic family under scrutiny. Misappropriated funds. Unreported gifts. An internal audit had quietly surfaced after the infamous birthday dinner imploded. Donors began to pull out. Sponsors distanced themselves. And Lois. She resigned from 3 boards before the week was out. I didn't watch the press unfold, but I heard about it. People sent links, left voicemails. Some were apologetic, most were careful. No one wanted to say outright they regretted it, but silence says plenty. When you try to silence the planner, I told a colleague over lunch, you forget she controls the microphones. One afternoon, as I was confirming event details with a floral vendor in Naples, I got an email. From Vernon. Subject, moving forward body. We regret how things unfolded. If there's ever space to mend, we're open. No emotion, no warmth. Not even punctuation beyond the period. A sentence written like a footnote in someone else's history. I didn't reply. Some bridges aren't meant to be walked again, not out of bitterness, but because they've already served their purpose, to carry you far enough away. That night, as the wedding wrapped, I stood at the edge of the terrace with a glass of Prosecco. The ocean below breathed slow and steady. The sky turned rose gold. A breeze tugged at my dress, not harsh, just present, like a nudge forward. A staff member offered to take my glass, but I shook my head and raised it gently. To every woman who sat where she wasn't wanted, I whispered to the sea, and walked out with her power intact. I sipped slowly, not to savor it, but to mark it. This was mine. All of it. The moment, the view, the freedom. It didn't need confetti or applause. They begged for my return. But I didn't need it. I didn't win by going back. I won by moving forward. Some endings don't need applause. Just peace. And proof that you didn't need their chair to stand tall. Sometimes, the most powerful thing a woman can do isn't to shout or slam doors, but to walk away, quietly, with everything they thought they took from her still intact. Looking back, I don't regret a single moment I stood my ground. What they called drama, I called boundaries. What they called disloyalty, I called dignity. And what they mistook for weakness, that was just the silence of someone done being used. If you've ever been overlooked, spoken over, or told you were too much while doing the most, this story is for you. We don't always get apologies. We won't always be invited back. But sometimes, our greatest power lies in not needing the invitation at all. To every woman rebuilding her life on her own terms, your worth was never tied to who sat next to you. It was always in how you carried yourself when they asked you to stand. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from something that didn't honor your value? What did that moment teach you about yourself? If this video touched you or made you think, leave a comment with a 1, or tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't like it, that's okay too. Tell me why and where you think the story hit or missed. If you want to hear more stories like this, about women, strength, truth, and transformation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. The next story might just be yours. Thank you for watching. Keep walking forward.